June is primary season and Pride Month. We talk about both. The Point starts right now. Queens Councilmember Julie Won is running to replace retiring Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez. So I have to ask you have two other opponents in the race. Why are you the best person to replace a legend in Nydia Velázquez?
Marcia, it's so good to see you. Right now, we are seeing a national movement to fight against Trump, especially when it comes to immigration. And I'm the only immigrant in the race. I'm the only mom in the race. I'm also the only tech worker in the race. Right now, we are reading headline after headline about 700,000 people being let go, 300,000 people being let go across the country because of AI automations. And there's no better time now to elect somebody like me who has an understanding on AI regulations. I'm doing it right now in the city, and we must do it on a federal level to prepare the country.
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
The controller of the city of New York, Mark Levine, says that the economy could be, there's a 50% chance that New York City's economy could be destroyed by AI. So how would you prevent that? Right
now, I'm the first ever workforce development chair, and we had to create that entire committee. It didn't even exist before. But we're seeing it right now. You and I connected originally because I was contracts chair before, because I was a federal contractor for the feds and for my tech company. And now what we're focusing on is workforce development, because I think the problem is two-pronged. First is workforce development on understanding what's going to happen to our workforce instability. Just like the Industrial Revolution when all of our jobs went offshore, right now we're going to have an AI revolution where a lot of our jobs are going to be automated, and we have to prepare on reskilling and upskilling our workforce.
So you talk about upskilling.
Yes.
What does upskilling mean for workers and also for other people in New York who are, worried about how are they going to cope with AI?
It simply means retraining the workforce that currently is at risk of being laid off to be trained in basic AI literacy so that they can be re-strategized or relocated.
But what jobs would they do?
It depends on the company, right? Because it's going to be everything from creative for the film industry, because you now see that AI is taking over editing, to anywhere from white-collar workers to lawyers. Paralegals are being replaced with AI. So the range is so broad. So it's going to be a specialized education for each of them. And either the companies themselves who are going out of their way to lay them off should train them themselves within a 6-month period. And we should give them a tax write-off for that investment in those workers. Or they should pay a tax for having laid them off in the first place so that the government can have retraining workforce development for those people to find jobs elsewhere.
What about city workers? What would you do with them?
Right now, we know that city workers are, most of them are protected under unions, with the labor unions. And we also know that...
But if there's nothing for them to do, what are they going to sit around and play cards?
So there's different ideas, right? There's ideas like the data dividend, which means that tech companies who are using our personal data to build these AI models should pay a dividend to each and every one of us, the way that Alaska, for example, pays their citizens a dividend for their natural resources like gas. That's one way. And there's also conversations about universal basic income so that everyone has a minimal income. And then there's also floated ideas about 4-day work weeks, because if all of us have less work to do, then what are we going to do for human happiness? Like, what will we do for purpose? So there's a lot of new ideas that there are discussions about across the country.
What about the data centers? As you know, the legislature passed a bill that would have a moratorium on data centers, but there's no guarantee that the governor is going to sign it. How do you feel about that?
So the data centers, I think, are important
use a lot of electricity.
Yes, for the environment, it's going to be a strong impact. But what you should also know is that AI, because it's open source and because AI doesn't necessarily need a data center within the state. Right now, we have data centers across the country, and there are also companies that have been sanctioned to build data centers in space using solar energy, which is cleaner and better for our environment without polluting our waters.
So basically, you're going to help Elon Musk and SpaceX? I mean,
it's not done by SpaceX. It's done by other companies that are more sustainable long-term using solar energy, and that's probably the best source of data centers building long-term. And I actually agree with the data moratorium for New York for this time being until there's enough information, because right now there's no accountability with the pollutants in the water and also the lack of electricity for our grid. We already are undersourced enough. We can't add on to the power outage.
I'm just intrigued by having these data centers in space. I mean, would they be like, I mean, I know that Elon Musk has a Starlink system. Would it be something like that? Or we'd have to launch satellites into space for these data centers?
Yeah, it basically is placed on a fixated distance within the sun, like an equidistance. So that way it's 24/7. Whereas right now, solar panels is that it's not 24/7, and it's just not enough energy and power. And there are other startup companies that have already begun and have been pretty successful in their modeling.
So you say you would be better at going after Donald Trump than your two opponents. Why?
I've been pretty clear that I'm beholden to no one and I'm not afraid of anybody. You and I have connected on all of the land use projects where I have fought and broken records in the city of New York, building the highest amount of housing for past projects that have failed. For example, one law in the city failed 4 times before me, but I was able to build a coalition on the ground as well as in the council body to pass it unanimously for the 5th time in history.
All right, you brought up housing.
Yes.
So Julie Menon and some of the members of the council are now proposing building housing on libraries and other public buildings. I take it you support that?
It's one of the pilot sites is actually in my district in Sunnyside. So one of the proposed sites from yesterday listed Sunnyside Library as one of the proposed sites so that we have public land
like
that can be
or
built.
not?
Yes, I support it.
So, but we've also talked about Sunnyside being developed as a huge affordable housing project. How do you feel about that?
So I believe you're referring to Sunnyside Yards.
Yes.
That's a very different project because it's not affordable housing project that we're really talking about at the heart of it. Because when you read the fine print of everything that the mayor is saying and Donald Trump, is that the $21 billion that they're requesting is only to build the deck over the yards, which will take 50 to 100 years. And that is not including the cost of housing. And we also know the former deputy mayor who proposed Sunnyside Yards has come out on record on New York Times saying that it is actually not possible to build it within the proposal that it currently is. There's a lot of feasibility issues, but it doesn't mean it's not a bad idea. Just like we saw in Hudson Yards, Atlantic Yards.
But if you talk about the immediate need of affordable housing, and you tell me that just building the deck before you get to the housing is 50 years, I mean, really?
I know. We have a housing crisis now, and which is why I was never afraid to speak out. And I was the first one to point out, have you all read the feasibility study for this? It's on marsh till and glacial soil. It's just not a feasible project in the right immediate time.
So why did the mayor go to the White House and try to get the president to sign on for it?
You know, I'm not a mind reader, unfortunately, but if I had to speculate, I think he wanted within his 100 days something very big, something flashy to say that I want to build housing. But as you and I know, 100 years from now is way too long. My great-grandchildren would be the only ones to see it. And we have a housing crisis now with the lowest vacancy rate. And for us, what we've seen is that we can spend $2 billion building 15,000 units of housing, or we can spend $21 billion to not even pay for the 12,000 units of housing. The math just ain't mathing.
So I want to get to one other thing. You talk about the reason that you're running is you want to go to Washington and push for a lifetime of care.
Yes.
And that includes a wide expanse of things from childcare, paid family leave, etc. Why is that your signature issue?
Right now, I'm the only mom in the race, and I have 2 little kids. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. It costs me over $4,000 a month just for childcare for them to be in school from 9 until 6 o'clock. There's added cost for me to take care of them in the evening if I have to work late. I'm also an immigrant, a child of immigrants. I'm an immigrant myself, and my parents don't have 401ks. I am their retirement fund. That means that I'm really truly part of the sandwich generation where I'm taking care of my growing children and also my elderly aging parents, and I love them equally both. So it costs me a lot of money to do that, and I believe that the government should have adequate retirement care. And I've also and universal child care, as we saw, is a really popular and important issue. But also what breaks my heart the most are children who have come to my office who have said, hey, my grandmother died, or my mother died, my father died, my uncle died, and it's going to leave me $30,000 in a hole because there's no burial assistance. But because of my faith and religious belief, I have to bury them in this way. Is there any way you can help? And that's soul-crushing to me. All
right, so do you think, we have about 30 seconds left, do you really think you can get the federal government to pay for this? You have 30 seconds.
If we're spending billions of dollars on wars that we did not vote for in Congress, we can find the money, and the same way that we've been able to figure it out in the city level, to have universal childcare, to have better social benefits like free internet for all, which is what I champion, so that every public housing resident can have internet. As the former chair of contracts and as a former negotiator for so many of these government modernizations, we can find the money in efficiencies and savings.
Okay, Julie, we're gonna have to leave it right there for now, but up next we talk about Pride Month. It is Pride Month. I'm joined by one of the Grand Marshals of the New York City Pride March, Bernie Wagenblast, and Executive Director of New York City Pride, Im Lynde. And I'd like to ask you about the theme of this year's parade, which is for all of us. What does that mean to you? And also, Bernie, what does it mean to you? Let's start with you.
Sure. So the theme was actually chosen by the public for all of us, which comes from the Marshall P. Johnson quote, "There's no pride for some of us without liberation for all of us." And for all of us means not just all the queer people here in New York City, but around the United States and around the country as well. This year, the last count, there were over 16 prides that had to be canceled, so they can't celebrate their prides in their town. So we're doing this for them as well, for those.
And they were canceled because of intolerance?
They were canceled for intolerance, for hateful legislation, for lack of funding. We've actually invited 3 of those canceled prides to join us on Pride Sunday, and 3 of them have never been to New York City before, so it's going to be quite an experience.
Where are they coming from?
They're coming from Arlington, Texas, they're coming from Lake County, Ohio, and they're coming from South Carolina. They are going to be our guests, our special guests on the New York City Pride Float.
So what does for all of us mean to you, Bernie?
I'm going to emphasize a little of what Em said, that for me, it's people who are all over the country, because my good fortune, I grew up in the New York City metro area. So I've enjoyed a lot of acceptance. But if I were living my same life in other parts of the country, like Texas or Kansas, I would be having a much more difficult situation. And I feel for those people. So what I can do to represent for those folks, that's important to me.
Well, we also have to tell people who are watching that they have probably heard your voice like a zillion times. Because?
Yes. They would recognize me saying, "The next downtown 1 train is approaching the station. Please stand away from the platform edge."
Oh, my God. So let me ask you something. Before you transitioned, you always spoke like that?
Well, yeah, whenever I was doing professional work, at least.
And so now are you making an effort to change your voice?
Yes, that was very important to me, because my voice has played such a big role in my life, not just as a voice actor, but I was on the radio in New York for many years. So my voice is what people would recognize first before anything else. And for me, it was important that I have a voice that match my new presentation.
You know, I read about your story, and I was very moved by what you went through, and the fact that you waited until you were in your 60s to actually transition. How difficult was that for you to make that decision and to reach the point where you feel you're in the right place?
I think it was something that came along gradually as I understood. I've known I was trans from my earliest memory, so there was never a question or a doubt about that. But what was a little bit of a question was, how would I be accepted? Because until you come out, you're never really sure what kind of a reaction you're going to get. I came out in a public meeting in my hometown of Cranford, New Jersey, and the reaction was amazing. I had so much support from elected officials, appointed officials, just the neighbors in the town. And that really blew me away when I found that.
But as I read about it, basically your friend said, "Come on over and I'll give you a dress to wear." You didn't even know what the dress was going to look like.
No.
And so that was sort of a leap of faith on your part that you were going to actually do this. How difficult was that for you to make that decision to, today I'm going to put on a dress?
It was tough. I had her as my support, which was very helpful. It was away from where I live, so no one would know me that I was going to run into, so I wasn't afraid of that. But there's still a lot of concern as you go out for the first time. Do I look like a clown? What are people going to be staring at me? Your imagination always draws up the worst possible scenario. And then I was pleasantly surprised by such a positive reaction.
So the decision to make Bernie one of the grand marshals must have been a no-brainer for you. But tell me how you reached that decision.
Sure. Actually, it's actually a misconception that the staff and the board of New York City Pride chooses our grand marshal. So that it doesn't happen like that at all. We actually have our community and the public nominate the grand marshals, and the public also vote on the grand marshals. Even if we had that power, actually, I would have said, you know what, Bernie would make a great grand marshal this year. So I am so elated that our community chose Bernie and 2 other trans women. So we have 3 trans women as part of our grand marshals, Bowen Yang, and also the Gays Against Guns, which is kind of ironic that we're doing this today on the 10th anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting.
So I wondered, given the fact that the mood in Washington has been less than supportive, and there's been a mood against DEI and other things, how that has affected your organization, especially when it comes to raising money for the various things that you do.
Thank you. So we had a rough year last year. As you may have heard, corporations pulled out. It's not that dire this year, so we're actually in a good place. I think it has to do with the communities of those corporations going to their companies and saying, you know what, you need to support New York City Pride, or else you have to lose talented employees. We also have been fortunate enough to have the community individuals, mom and pop stores stepping up to fill the gap when there was a shortage of funding.
But do you think that the DEI policies, or the move again away from DEI policies, has affected acceptance of people in your community? Bernie, how about you?
I don't feel it's been very noticeable here in the New York metro area, but it certainly is very noticeable outside of that. You know, instances where, for instance, in Kansas, they had less than 24 hours notice that they had to change their driver's licenses, and the driver's license with their new gender marker was going to be invalid. So things like that definitely have a big effect, and it's felt by folks who live there. And, you know, even myself, I before would feel comfortable traveling anywhere in the country. But now I would have to think very carefully if I were going to a place that wasn't supportive and accepting.
Do you have fear sometimes in going someplace where you feel you wouldn't be accepted?
I would have trepidation. I don't know that I would say fear, but I would have trepidation, wondering how this is going to go if I have to use a public restroom. Am I going to run into any issues there? Am I possibly going to be arrested because I'm using a women's restroom? So things like that, yes.
And maybe you could talk to me about the mission of NYC Pride.
Sure. Our mission is essentially to create safe spaces for LGBTQ people, to also do our part so that everyone can have equal protections and rights under the law. And we do this by creating events, not just for June, Pride June, but also every other week. More than 100 people fill up our office spaces every month. The need is still there. We've actually run out of space. So our goal is to get a bigger space for our community.
And how long will that take, do you think?
My goal is to do that by the 60th anniversary. That's in 3 years, and it's kind of incredible that we're already approaching the 60th anniversary. I know, so we're already planning for it. It takes that long to plan for it. It's going to be a big, big celebration in 2029.
All right, that's all the time we have. We're going to have to leave it right there for now, but our conversations continue right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. Thank you for joining me. New Yorkers won't be singing pennies from heaven anymore because the feds have stopped minting the coins. Will they be missed? And will we eventually switch to a digital monetary system? New Yorkers are weighing in on your point. When was the last time you paid cash for something?
Day before yesterday. Never.
Right now, for the first, bought the cornbread and coffee.
I can't remember.
I think this weekend on a supermarket.
Oh my God. I mean, within the last month, but I can't even remember what it was for. For little things, maybe a few days ago, but not often anymore. That's usually little things.
I like keep a couple dollars on me, buy like a bottle of water or something.
A couple of days ago, but it was the first time in a long time.
How come? Why'd you use cash?
Because I was getting a haircut, and my barber prefers cash.
Yesterday.
What'd you buy?
I bought a dress at Bloomingdale.
You pay cash?
Yes, I use cash, I use credit card.
Are pennies necessary?
Yes, and I have a giant bucket of them at home if you want them.
Probably not, but it's a shame we've lost them.
Yes. We need our pennies.
I haven't used them in probably over a decade.
No, but they're cute.
In Canada, they don't have them anymore.
You know what the problem is? A lot of these children nowadays, they need those coins because they don't know the denomination.
You're right.
They don't know. I've been teaching my grandkids because they don't teach it in school anymore.
Do you think that paper money matters?
Yes, still matters.
I don't know that it should, but I think it does.
To people who don't have a lot of it, I'm sure it does matter, yeah, because they can't get credit.
And a lot of places, you'd be surprised because a lot of places don't take nothing but cash.
I think for children to learn, like our history.
I think it still does to an extent, but it doesn't take up the role in our regular lives that it used to by far.
Do you think we'll always have physical money, or will we just go digital?
Well, who knows, you know?
I think eventually it will go digital, just like the subway.
I wish everything were electronic. It's a lot easier to manage, but it's also a lot easier to spend. And it is a lot less safe, so it's a mixed bag. I do think it is overall much more convenient.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't know that I would call it good or bad. It's a sad thing.
I think it's a good idea. We have to move on with technology, you know?
I just think it's the way that it is.
It's hard to say. The future, everything moves forward, right? And one day we'll come back to money again, right? Everything returns.
I like, I'm older, so I like just crackling bills in my wallet, but I think they're going bye-bye.